New digital technologies are driving a step change in enterprise business transformation. At the Digital Twin Podcast, we explore the intersection of technology and business. What should your digital twin look like?
Today, we want to address a very interesting topic, the digital transformation scorecard. There are significant efforts, significant investments made across enterprises today for transformation in general and digital in particular. What makes them successful?
Yeah, I think you had a good point on that. What makes them successful, what makes them fail, or how do you evaluate as well, right? Before you embark on the journey, right? You can get references, you can start about, what works and what doesn't work. But how do you evaluate your digital initiatives, the transformation you're about to make? What gives you the biggest bang for your dollar? And who are the partners and people that you want to work with to help get you there? What are some of the things that companies, people in general are looking for in a partner or a solution provider, right? I mean, this is the key, Is it technology? Is it services? Is it software? There's a lot of different components that go into solving use cases that can be somewhat part of the initiatives that you guys are running in organizations. With the DT scorecard, there's a few key criteria that we found that are quite interesting, that have a tangent and a life of their own if you really spend time with it. But just to give you a quick rundown, a few of them that we really feel that are key contributors to a successful or an evaluation criteria is ease of adoption, right? I mean, ease of adoption is a big thing, right? I mean, how are you going to adopt this transformational change? Because you're actually transforming your organization into something a little bit more progressive and a little bit more digitally native or digital frontier. So ease of adoption is one. A tangible benefit is another one, right? I mean, if it doesn't actually tie to tangible money or ROI, I mean, how are you going to justify that, right?
And it could be revenue, but it could be cost.
Absolutely.
It could also be new products altogether, right? I mean, think outside the box, and how do you launch new products or services? Could it be going after new markets based on what you know and what your expertise is, and how you leverage that in new and different ways? So I think there's a number of ways to look at benefits, but I think that's one of the top two right there.
One of the top two, and what we really see in this environment too. Another one that comes to mind is time to value, right? Speed to value. How can we start seeing value right away, right? I think that's one of the, the compulsive nature in our society today is everybody wants to see results pretty quickly to believe, right? So they want to have
one
some
other
of that
thing,
credibility. Yeah.
Yeah, one other reason for that is with digital, we're moving at light speed, right? If you don't do this in months, as opposed to trying to do this in years, you might, by the time you get there, it'll be too late, right? Others would already be there. You would have zero advantage. So, if you're going to do something, you got to do it quick.
You got to do it quick, and can it be easily, implementable, right? I mean, one of the challenges too is when you look at doing a digital transformation, how much effort is it going to take us, the business, the corporation? Are we going to have to take resources that are already tapped to the max already? Do we have the right skill sets? Do we have the time and effort to put into this? Are we going to have to outsource this all and trust that they understand what's best in our nature, that we translate our needs correctly to somebody else, right? So these are some of the things on when you're looking at doing a digital transformation project, how you want to chart down this path, right?
When you say ease of adoption, I also think about change management, right? Because change management is one of the most critical pieces that would determine your success or failure of your transformation effort. The ease of adoption is going to be pretty key to the change management effort. Through digital, you're changing the way people do their jobs. How they do their jobs every day, every single moment of their life. Potentially, right? Drastically change how they interact with data, how they interact with systems. And so the ease of adoption of that technology would be critical to change management. Otherwise, people could say, hey, that's too hard, or that's different, or that's not going to work for us, or maybe it works for somebody else, not for me. So there's many different ways for that to fail.
Yeah, that's 100% on board with that. The effort, the adoption. You talk about change management, but the real underlying or silver line with digital transformation, not only just with change management, is the big elephant in the room is the natural culture change that happens, because you're actually transforming your business, the culture of your organization. And not a lot of people take culture change. It's not a simple task to do, but a non-intrusive way of changing the culture. If you do digital transformation right, it should be seamless. The right digital transformation projects or execution should be almost seamless.
We all interact with technology differently. We learn differently. We interact at work differently. Our social lives could potentially be different as well, right? So I think how we adapt to change might also be different. And so, being cognizant of your demographics within the organization is going to be key to understanding how that adoption would go and how the change management would actually be accepted within the organization. Do we have the right skills? Staying on the same point on the change management, I'm a Gen Xer, you're a millennial.
Yeah, it's one of those things that it's the elephant. Nobody really likes to get to that, the nuts and bolts of it, but there are ways. There are ways to slowly, the way I look at it is when you transform culture, you got to have an idea of where you're going, right? Where you want this organization to be. And to change that overnight is going to be a disruption to the system. So how do you make those incremental digital transformation, culture changes in slow turns, where the actual revolution of the changes happening in a subtle way, where people are changing or the organization's changing, and by the time you know it, after the 15th or the 10th to 12th change, you have that full revolution to say, hey, wow, look at us now. We're digital. We're digital, or we're a different organization. That's the key, right? And having that mindset.
There's a number of key factors. So how does somebody go about doing this, right? What's the model? What's the engagement model going to look like with the third parties, if that's what you're looking for?
Yeah, I think that's one of the key aspects of this is, it comes back to one of the other criteria is the client effort. How much effort do clients want to be, be involved in this process? And I would say they should be involved quite a bit. If what I've seen in the past is having some dedicated resources that are overarching, that have been in the organization for quite some time, to give that lessons learned, to give that the subtleties in the organization.
Folks that can champion.
Yes, the linchpins, the glues, the people that actually make the organization work, have some ownership in this so that they can shape the future of the organization, is a key component. And they should really have some dedication to these little changes, these little changes that we're talking about. And they should be kind of fast, scalable, fail fast, get there quickly, see if it's showing results. And the key component with a partner is one people that some organizations miss is do they understand my business? Do they have a little bit of domain expertise that can really help us, right? That's a key component in this as well. I mean, do they know what
technology can only go so far? Right?
Exactly, 100%. When we talk about domain expertise, we look at organizations that can see the problems, anticipate, understand what's actually happening, how they can actually connect that transformation in a way where, one, they understand the operations, they're in the shoes, they're almost understanding what's happening, and the value of the change, right? I mean, they got to articulate the value of the change and actually show and understand that they can feel what that change is going to be, because they've seen some of that, right?
Vendors have to really take into account the fact that an organization that's taking on that broader transition or transformation efforts have many different stakeholders. And so they may not be, much to what you just said, right, about key stakeholders that are driving those efforts. And they could be many parts of the organization, but really understanding who the key players are and really messaging, communicating with them and supporting them and really, bring your expertise to the table in a fashion that would be truly productive for that transformation. I think that's important.
Organizations have is finding that right, and bring it back to one of the DT scorecard, the tangible benefit, right? We're locked. A lot of people are locked into their day to day. It's very difficult for them to articulate the tangible benefit to the organization to say, why should we be doing this, right? I mean, every organization should be questioning why they're going through the transformation. I mean, there's a lot of theory. There's a lot of great things out there. There's a lot of bright lights to tell you. There's the fear of missing out, like most organizations feel sometimes. They want to do something, but they're not sure what they want to do. But does it make sense, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's and one of the challenges.
Why would you want to do it? What's the
Yeah,
strategic
why?
imperative behind wanting to do it?
Yeah, there's got to be, you got to tie it down to reality, right?
Yeah.
What are you really doing? Can we see value quickly? Can we test something that's actually going to show us a little bit of benefit that makes sense? And is it going to be easy for our organization to adopt, right? I mean, we're talking about these things, and how much effort does it take from our side? Do you have the domain expertise that actually can drive some of this, help us convert this change? Because it's an effort from both sides, right?
Let me throw a grenade out there.
What do you
What do you think about pilot purgatory?
Call it a half in, half out. Let's just dip the toe to see what it looks like. But in reality, when you think about it, I mean, why am I going to spend money on a digital transformation effort that, one, there's probably not a lot of data out there for me to evaluate whether I should go with this. Two, I don't know where to start. And three, I have to do something because everybody's doing something. I need to do something. So where should I do something?
So there has to be budget set aside for organization to experiment. Okay. So in my view, that has to happen, right? You have to be able to attempt solving problems without fear of failure. Yeah. Now you could call that phase one, you could call that pilot, you could call that experiment, proof of concept. I mean, I think the names are many out there, but the truth of the matter is you want to be able to try something without fear of failure. But then you also don't want to be in a constant motion of trying and not doing anything productive, right? So you also want to get to the end of the line where you're trying to solve something and you have a timeline to get there. Yeah, that's my take on it.
I call it continuous improvement 4.0. I really, that's really what you're trying to do here. You're trying to institute a digital way of a continuous improvement, right? Of more vigilance. How do you get more top line? How do you save more money? How do you become more safer? How do you reduce the risk? These are the things that matter. This ties back to tangible benefit, right? And another thing too, a lot of organizations may have multiple assets all over the place, right? They may have multiple sites, multiple problems at different areas, right? And are they doing things that are scalable, right? Do they have a scalable framework to actually replicate some of these strategies across their business, right? Can it scale? Because, once you start to scale, you start to see the economies of this and really drive that value. Now you have a story. You are the innovative company in your space. You're driving that change, and those are some of the things that really
but when it comes to scalability, what I would also add is the technology has to be scalable, right? Whether that's being, scale in terms of pure, size or location or asset count, people count, user count. I mean, scale can be in many different ways, right? But, the organization that you're working with, the partner that you're working with, are they in a position to support your scale and your execution functions? Now, maybe the technology that you are buying isn't going to require a team to help you execute. That's possible. But that has to be taken into consideration. When you're scaling as an enterprise, Can your partner scale with you? Can they support you in that execution phase? Right? That's
Yeah.
extremely important.
I mean, I think that's part of also the engagement model, right? I mean, that's one of the components of this scorecard as well, right? How do they engage? How do they execute? I mean, what's the measurement around this and the scalability around that, right? Are they going to be with you throughout this journey, right? And or are you going to have a team that's going to develop and take this on yourself and drive this initiative internally, right? I think those are some of the key things that, at the end of the day, when we're looking at tangible benefit and the reason why you should do this, the key for a lot of these C-suite executives, or CEOs, CFOs, the ultimate goal here is can I get a better feel of my business, right? Is there anything that I can do today through a digital transformation effort that's going to give me a better understanding, a better feeling of my business, of how to maneuver it to be more competitive moving forward, right? At the end of the
Fundamentally,
day, that's the
yeah.
key. That's the fundamental reality of doing these projects, right? If
You
you're
know what
not
that
going to
comes
feel
down
that,
to is really speed of decision making.
yeah,
Yeah.
having a feel of the business, being able to have confident decision making, making decisions quickly, and making a high percentage of right decisions for your organization. Because at the end of the day, it's going to be about the bottom line, right? You're going to be graded on the results, the efforts, the money, the ROI that you're given to do these projects have got to be there, right? How do you measure that? And if you can't feel it from the C-suite, what are you doing, right? You got to be able to feel it. If you're up there, if you're a CEO, if you're a CIO, CDO, you're a CFO, can I feel the transformation? If you can't feel it, then it's not worth it. You got to
You
be
know
able to
what?
feel it.
You know what it shouldn't be? It
What?
shouldn't be when a C-suite, a CEO says, "Hey, why don't you go check out AI and maybe even quantum computing?" Right? I heard about this or read about this in an article. Just go find out what's going on. Let's do some experiments. That's not a digital transformation strategy at all. It does happen.
That's a hobby, though. That's what we call the
Yeah,
CEO hobby, And at the end of the day, that's time not well spent on driving value to the organization. At the end of the day, how do you get a better feel for your business? If you can't feel the digital transformation up there in the C-suite, you got to be thinking about what projects and initiatives you're running, because you've got to be able
absolutely.
to feel it. If you can't feel it, it's not transforming.
And I think we've covered this in other podcasts, but leadership is front and center for a digital transformation scorecard, right? Commitment, engagement of the C-suite, the communication style, and how often. And did you find champions in the organization to help really translate your vision to reality, right? And so that communication is central. It's kind of the central nervous system of the digital transformation effort.
Exactly, 100%. I think we've hit a few of these. From ease of adoption to tangible benefit, time to value, the effort it's going to take from a client's perspective, the expertise that's around this whole initiative, right? Identifying that value, and is it scalable, and how are we going to engage, right? How's the organization going to engage with the partners that they need to actually feel the transformation? And I'm not talking about somebody at the ground level. I'm talking about the C-suite. They got to feel it. If they
Yeah.
can't feel it, why are they spending?
Yep.
I mean, that's kind of the what we're seeing out there in the simplicity around these areas create a higher success amongst organizations, and having a better feel of the organizations with simplicity really drives the vision and clarity, which is desperately needed in these initiatives, because these are, like you mentioned before, not just a change management, it's a culture change. I mean, that's something you can feel as a business. As a CEO, you're going to feel that change. You will feel that culture change. So
Absolutely.
that should be one of your first indications that, hey, something's changing.
That reminds me, we should probably do a podcast just on that.
I think
I think that's
that
a
can be a whole segment in itself. We should probably reach out to a few of the key digital transformation drive members. See who we can find out there that can actually give us some interesting stories around the change that they felt around digital transformation, especially around the culture. That would be great.
Hey, anybody who's listening to this podcast,
Oh yeah,
is
absolutely,
interested in
absolutely.
yeah,
Ping us, send us
in
a
reaching out.
reach out to us on our social sites. Ping us. You'll see our contact information on the website as well as on this podcast. So with that, we thank you for joining. This is Hari and Omar signing off on the Digital Twin Podcast.
Adios.